In August 1914, General Victor Dankel's First Army marched eastward into the Galician theater. They were stepping into a formidable landscape, stretching from the Vistula to the Bug rivers, a dense, swampy, and heavily forested frontier. The Austro-Hungarian commanders relied on traditional horse-mounted cavalry to scout ahead, but the thick woods and marshland severely limited their range. The army was moving forward virtually blind, completely unaware of where the Russian forces were massing. Desperate for information, the military turned to a radically untested asset, the aviation troops, or k.u.k. Luftfahrttruppen. They deployed their entire operational fleet, just 39 aircraft, to map the immense operational zone from above. These early machines, primarily Lohner B.II biplanes, were incredibly fragile. Built from wood and canvas, they carried zero armor, and the pilots and observers flew with only standard infantry rifles or handguns for self-defense. The very concept of aerial reconnaissance was still being invented on the fly. The men in those open cockpits quickly learned that before they could even worry about spotting Russian troops, they had to survive the sheer physical act of keeping their planes in the air. The success of this experiment carried the weight of the campaign. If these aviators failed to master their machines, Dankel's First Army would march blindly into a catastrophic Russian ambush. Moving these aircraft to the front lines presented an immediate logistical wall. The planes didn't fly to their deployment zones. Ground crews disassembled them, packed the fuselages into massive timber crates, and shipped them via a congested rail network to forward railheads. When those trains finally unloaded at forward field bases like Nisko and Stutzen, there was no aviation infrastructure waiting for them. These airfields were nothing more than open patches of grassland, often situated directly next to local church cemeteries. Once the crates arrived, mechanics had to physically rebuild the wood and linen biplanes entirely from scratch. Working in the open air with basic hand tools, they meticulously reattached wings and tuned tension wires just to get the machines flight-ready. Mother Nature relentlessly punished these makeshift operations. Severe autumn windstorms frequently tore through the camps, collapsing the heavy temporary canvas tent hangers directly onto the planes and shredding the delicate airframes underneath. These crews were also operating well within the danger zone. The airfield at Stutzen was positioned so close to the front that Russian field artillery stationed across the Vistula River actively shelled their positions, with shrapnel routinely hitting the adjacent church tower. Before a pilot ever pulled the throttle to engage the enemy, simply assembling a complete aircraft and protecting it from the weather was a hard-won logistical victory. In the air, danger only escalated. This Wikipedia entry for the Lohner B.II shows it was designed for the Austrian Alps, but forced into the Galician frontier. Its technical specifications reveal its most catastrophic flaw, the 85-horsepower Hiero engine. The Hiero engine vibrated violently, snapping metal rigging wires and fracturing fuel lines. To map positions, crews were squeezed into a deadly operational window, beneath an 800-meter cloud ceiling, but dangerously close to 200-meter infantry rifle fire. Pounded by their own engines and shot at by Russian troops, the planes broke down constantly. Engine failures became a daily reality, frequently forcing crews to make terrifying emergency landings deep behind enemy lines. Every reconnaissance flight in the Lohner B.II became a tense battle of endurance, requiring the crew to outlast their own slowly disintegrating machine just long enough to bring the intelligence home. The true test for these aviators arrived during the Battle of Kraśnik in late August 1914. Despite the daily mechanical disasters, crews from Flick 7 and Flick 8 managed to keep a handful of their planes in the sky while the battle raged below. Pushing through the engine vibrations and ground fire, observers visually identified 8 full Russian infantry battalions marching near the village of Kamyan. Pushing further, they also spotted a series of hidden Russian troop trains operating north of Lublin, completely exposing the logistics network feeding the enemy advance. The scope and accuracy of this data far surpassed anything the traditional cavalry scouts had been able to gather in the previous weeks. Armed with this precise intelligence, General Dankel successfully anticipated the incoming Russian flanking maneuvers, countered their troop movements, and secured a critical victory along the northern sector of the front. Ironically, the very machine that helped deliver this victory was quickly deemed unfit for combat. The Lohner B.II proved too slow and structurally weak for frontline service, and the military promptly reassigned the surviving airframes to secondary training roles. The plane itself failed, but the Kraśnik campaign permanently altered military doctrine. The High Command now understood that looking down on the battlefield provided an unparalleled strategic advantage. The intelligence brought back by those few surviving crews was so decisive that it justified the exorbitant logistical hurdles and the severe mechanical costs. The centuries-old tradition of a commander relying on horseback scouts or trying to read a battle through binoculars from a nearby hilltop was suddenly rendered obsolete. The aviators of the k.u.k. Luftfahrtruppen proved that the course of a campaign would no longer be decided solely by forces on the ground. Victory now depended on what a pilot could survive to see from the sky.